Learning all the notes in the treble clef and the bass clef can get pretty overwhelming. There's a lot that you're going to have to learn and memorize. Most of the time, you get a good handle on, say, maybe the treble clef first and then start working on the bass clef. Here, they're having us work on both at the same time. So in the next portion of this lesson, I'm going to be going over various ways that you can approach learning the names of the notes and where they are on the piano. I don't want you to try to utilize all of the things that I'm explaining to learn your notes, but if there's something that you find really helps, then focus on learning the notes in that method. So don't get overwhelmed with all the different ways that I'm explaining how you can identify notes on the staff and then on the piano. Just gravitate towards what works for you. One of the other things that I want to draw your attention to are these flashcards that came with your packet. They will be very helpful in memorizing and just giving yourself a lot of repetition in practicing and understanding where the notes are. So they have in the front the note, and so you want to look at this side first and see if you can identify what the note is, and then on the back, when you turn it over, they give you the answer of what the note is as well as where it can be found on the piano. And that's the key, is just understanding what that note is telling you to do on the piano. So again, as I go forward and explain different ways on how you can identify notes, use what works best for you. On page 44 of your manual, they first have us learn a few of the line notes. Here they have in the bass clef, they want us to learn the very bottom line, which is a G, the middle line is the D, and then the top line, the A. So just to review different ways of how you can identify these, because we're not always going to be having the letter names written there for us, is remembering that the bass clef line starts with G, and then you can work up in order. So you can go G, then the next space is A, the line is B, C, and then here on this line is D, E, F, G, and then A. So that's one way you can work up, is just to go in alphabetical order. Or you could use the little phrases that I introduced to you earlier in this lesson, where for the bass clef, we say grandpa's belt doesn't fit anymore. So those are a few ways how you can identify these different line notes. And then I want to make sure you understand how you can then use this information to identify where it's going to be on the keyboard. So here we have this G on the very bottom line, and it's going to be played down here. And I want you to see the distance between this G and the middle C. It is not the first G, but it's the second G below middle C. And so one of the ways that I can know that is because here, when we do the alphabet, when we go up in alphabetical order, we'll go G, A, B, C, D, E, F, and then here's the other G before we get to then where middle C would be. So that's how it tells us that this is the second G below middle C. So then I would identify where middle C is on the piano, and then we remember that G is the white key that's in between the first of the three black keys, and then we go to find the second one. Or you could just work your way backwards and go, okay, if this is middle C, then this would be B, A, and here's our note G, but that's the first G below middle C. So that would be written here if that's what they wanted us to play. And so we know that it's not going to be this G on the piano, but it's going to be the one lower. And instead of continuing to work your way down by saying the names of each key, you can then use your understanding that if this is a G and it's in between the first two of the three black keys, then we know that the next note in between the first two of the three black keys is also going to be a G. And so then you would go to two G's below middle C to find this note. Here we have the D, and we'll use some of the same concepts on how we can find where that exact D is on the piano. And so if we look here, we have D, E, F, G, A, B, and then here's middle C. There is no other D in between middle C, and where this D is written. So that tells me it is going to be the first D below middle C. So here's our middle C on the piano. So one quick way of how you could figure out where this D is, if this is middle C, you know the next note is going to be D, but obviously it's not this one written here because this D is above middle C. But the reason why I'm pointing that out is because then we can be reminded that, okay, D is the white key that's in between the two black keys. So now I'm going to go to the first D below middle C that's in between the two black keys, and that's where I'll find the D that they want you to play whenever it is written here on the middle line of the bass clef. Finally, you can do the same thing with this A. We know that it's A because of our phrase, Grandpa's belt doesn't fit anymore, or whatever phrase or however you want to learn how to identify it on this line. And because of how close it is to middle C, it's very easy to know that it is the first A below middle C. And you can just easily work your way backwards here. If this is middle C, then this is a B, and here's our A. Okay, so now let's go to the treble clef notes that they want us to learn on the lines. So because we're in the treble clef, we know that this very first line is an E. And then we can work up in alphabetical order. If this is an E, then the space is F, then the line is G, A, B, C, D, E, and then the top line is F. Or you could use our shortcut phrases. In the treble clef, we use the phrase, every good boy deserves fudge. So go ahead and use what you feel the most comfortable, what makes the most sense to you, in identifying what these notes are. And then we'll go ahead and make sure we understand how this note on this line is telling us what to play on the piano. So because this is the first E above middle C, we then can find middle C and go C, D, E to know that any time that this E is written in the treble clef on this line, you're going to be playing this E on the piano. Next, we'll move over to the B. We'll want to make sure that this is indeed the first B above middle C. And so you could just go ahead and know that this is middle C and then D, E, F, G, A, B. So it is the first B above middle C. And so then you can go ahead and work your way up the keys, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, to know that this is exactly where this B is located on the piano. Other things that you could consider is if this is a B, the very next note is the next C above middle C. And so that could also give you an indication that if you know that this is middle C, then this is the next C, and this B is the note just below it. So just use whatever approach is going to be best for you in identifying what this note is written on the line and how you can find it on the piano. And then finally, our top line of F. We can look and see that it is not the first F above middle C, because we have our C, D, E, and then the first F above middle C is down here in this space. So this is going to be the second F above middle C. So here, middle C, D, E, here's the first F above middle C, and this F is the first white key before our three black notes. So then you can go from this first F to the next F higher, and this is the exact location that you will play whenever you see this F on the top line. I would go ahead and do as they recommend, to pull out these cards from your pile of flashcards and just practice identifying these different notes. The nice thing about these flashcards is you can take them with you. You don't have to have a piano in order for these to be effective. You can practice by identifying what the name of the note is, and then you'll see on the back that they'll tell you that the note is F, and then they'll show you the exact location of where that is on the piano. If it helps you to identify, say, the other F here, to just get in your mind that this F on the very top line is 2 Fs above middle C, then please go ahead and do that. Do whatever will help you get as familiar as you can with all of these different notes and where they're located on the keyboard. The exercise on page 45 is going to be a little challenging if this is the first time you are learning about the names of the notes on the lines and spaces and where they're located on the keyboard. And so I want to make sure that before you try to practice this, that you've gone over these notes several times with either your note cards or go over their location and on the page as well as on the keyboard several times on page 44 before you try to do this exercise. So they do give us some finger numbers sporadically throughout just to kind of help you and give you some prompts. So they will want you to put your first finger and your right hand on middle C. We know that the right hand will be playing all the notes that are found here on the top line with the treble clef. And then your left hand will look ahead and we'll see that this first finger is located on the A. We know that's an A because it's Grandpa's belt doesn't fit anymore. And this A is the first A below middle C. So you'll go ahead and put your thumb on your left hand, your first finger on your left hand on that A. You'll get your hands in position. And for this first line, that's where they would like your fingers to be positioned. But then it changes for each line. You see that they put the double bar here, indicating that what they've asked us to do here will be different for the second line because this is over. So as you can see, instead of having a 1 on the A, they now want your third finger in the left hand to be on the A. Let's look ahead and see on the treble clef where they want our right hand. They're going to want our first finger to be on the E that is just above middle C. So you'll have to go through understanding where your fingers will have to be on each separate line. You can't keep your hands in the same position. This will present some challenges, but it also will get us ready for hymn playing because our hand positions when we're playing hymns rarely can stay in the same exact place throughout the entirety of the piece. Once you're comfortable with pages 44 and 45 of your manual, you can then move on to page 46, where they'll have us use all of the line notes in the bass clef as well as in the treble clef. They want you to label what their names are, as well as draw a line down to where these notes would be located on the piano. I encourage you to continue to do the note cards that you have been using, as well as add in your extra notes that were not introduced on page 44 and 45. On page 47, there are exercises that incorporate all of the notes on the lines in both the treble and the bass clefs. There are 2 different exercises. The reason I know that there are 2 different exercises is because I look to see where the double bar is. Here in the treble clef, the right hand will be starting this exercise. They want our third finger to be on the E that is just above middle C. So our first finger then will be on middle C in the right hand. Let's look at the left hand where they want that to be positioned. This is the first finger on the note that is the top line of the bass clef. So we can use our phrase, Grandpa's belt doesn't fit anymore, to know that this is the A, and it's going to be the first A below middle C. So you can go ahead and put your first finger on that A below middle C to have your hands in place. On all of these exercises, I encourage you to say the names of the notes as you play. And when you are comfortable with that, then go ahead and start incorporating the rhythms that they ask you to do. Normally, I would have you play or focus on the rhythms first, but because right now our main focus is understanding what this note is and where it is to be played on the piano, that's what I want you to be focusing on and not so much on the rhythms. I still want you to practice them, but if you're getting a little overwhelmed with learning all the names of the notes, please just focus on the notes, and then we'll get into the rhythms once you're set on what all these notes are and where they are on the piano. For the second exercise on page 47, let's look and see where they would like our hands to be placed. The bass clef or left hand will be playing first in this piece, and they want our fifth finger to be on this note, which is the first line of the bass clef. The bass clef notes, the very first line is a G. This is the second G below middle C. And so you'll go ahead and find where that second G below middle C is and put your fifth finger on that in the left hand. Let's look ahead and see where the right hand starts in the treble clef. And it's going to be this note here on the second line of the treble clef. I'm going to use the phrase, every good boy deserves fudge, and so that is the G, and it is the first G above middle C. So you'll go ahead and put your first finger on the first G above middle C to have your hand ready and placed for the rest of the notes.